Hello, and welcome to Essential Alchemy. Alchemy is defined as the power or process that changes or transforms something in a mysterious or impressive way. My hope is that the information in this podcast can help you transform your mood, your energy, physical health, or even connect some dots to help you shift your mental or emotional state. I'm your host, Jodi Cohen, a best-selling author, award-winning journalist, functional practitioner, lifelong learner, and founder of Vibrant Blue Oils, a company that sells proprietary blends of high-quality organic or wild-crafted essential oil remedies designed to help you return to your ideal mental, physical, and emotional state. You can find out more about me and my company at vibrantblueoils.com. And with that, let's get started with today's episode. Hi, I'm your host, Jodi Cohn, and I'm so unbelievably excited to share my very dear friend, Sinclair Kennally, with you. She is an award winning expert on chronic digestive conditions, the CEO of Detox Rejuvenation, and the host of the popular Health Reset podcast, and a survivor of complex chronic illness. Her mission is to help people to reclaim their health and rediscover their creative power so they can be who they came here to be. Today, she and her partner, Michael, specialize in resolving the root causes behind complex chronic illness and digestive issues. They've helped over 10,000 people and hopefully will be helping millions more reclaim healthy livers, and their community of 100,000 plus people focuses on the tools to heal themselves from chronic conditions without doctors and pharmaceuticals. Welcome, Sinclair.
Thank you, Hen, for that warm welcome. It's great to be here. You know how much I love your work.
And I love yours. And I'm so excited to really delve into detox and drainage and kind of what people are up against and what they can do and some of the blind spots that they might run into.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, yeah, let's just dive right in, can we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so one of the things that I really want to highlight here is if you're drawn to detox and if you're drawn to Jodi's work, for example, you're already aware, and I really want to acknowledge you for like looking for natural solutions to support this body in this strange time that we're living in. It's not an accident that you might be on a health journey because 6 out of 10 American adults do not feel well and they actually have a chronic illness diagnosis versus 4% back in 1960. So this is a rapidly evolving picture. And when you look at the statistics of like, hey, 61% of American adults just have reported that they have ongoing digestive issues, really begs the question, what has gone wrong and what can we do to support ourselves through it? And we have natural solutions within the body. We have natural strategies to maintain our own healing. We have great detox and drainage organs. It's built in. So then the question is like, how come they can't keep up? Well, we have over 100,000 chemicals that are entering into our space. And it's been certain studies show that over 20,000 chemical substances might be in your body right now. That's a lot of work for the body to maintain and handle. So we want to go straight to the front lines, so to speak. What's happening in the body? How come what's going on in our drainage pathways and our detox pathways? And how can we support that process? We really don't want to override the body and pretend that we can outsmart it. It works so much better if we can work with the body and use specific strategies in the right order for the body if you already have chronic symptoms.
I love that. Specific strategies in the right order. Can
Yeah.
you elaborate on that?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things that we always start with is first things first. What are you experiencing? What are you aware of? Because so many people have normalized how they feel that it's really important to get a bare assessment. So like we have a liver stagnation self-assessment, for example. And this is a really good thing to do a gut check on. Gut check. I have a lot of really dumb puns. I can't help it.
I love them too.
I'm here to entertain myself, guys. You're just along for the ride.
Yeah.
But I actually checked so many of these boxes for decades, and I didn't have any understanding that there was a relationship to the liver about them. So if you experience fatigue, irritability, gas, bloating, skin blemishes, rashes, excess weight, or conversely, if you really struggle to maintain a healthy weight, dark circles under the eyes, feeling just sluggish, especially in the mornings, indigestion, feeling like things just sit and they don't really move after you eat them. And you have to kind of eat around certain types of food to avoid food reactions, even if you don't have quote unquote food allergies. Constipation or diarrhea, or just for fun, alternating constipation and diarrhea, because that's also a factor. Or just that sense that you have a slow metabolism. Like it takes a long time for things to move through you. For women, PMS or menstrual issues, big time. That's a really important indicator. And again, the emotional piece, like easily irritated or overwhelmed, quick to anger. I thought those were character traits of mine. And
Yeah.
I had so much grief about it because in my early years, I thought of myself as a very generous, emotionally resilient person. And I was actually kind of known for that. Like they'd put me as a kid, they'd put me next to the problem kid in class. They'd sit me next to them and just as a support system. And then they'd move my desk to the next problem kid. And I didn't know it was happening. My parents wanted to know, why are you moving her desk so much? And this
Yeah.
happened with more than one teacher. They're like, oh yeah, we just put her next to the problem kid and they get better because they could handle it. And then it turned out by the time I was in my early 20s, I was quite reactive and easily irritated, easily overwhelmed, wild swings of emotions. Like, who the hell is this? This isn't who I thought I was. So that's a great example of what you think of as your temperament or social anxiety, easily socially overwhelmed, when in fact, those are signs that your body is overloaded for so many of us. It's not that we all haven't been through trauma. Of course we have. I went through trauma. I was, molested as a child. I was raped as a teen, and I chalked up some of my reactivity to those traumas, big T traumas, when what was really happening was I wasn't emotionally resilient to meet those traumas because my body was already overloaded.
Right.
So these are really important things to keep an eye on and start connecting the dots for yourself. So I just want to start with like, what is a real, constellation of symptoms that you're actually dealing with that you have normalized because you're looking around at everybody else and they also don't feel well. Things are chalking up to stress or age or, your life traumas, to be quite frank.
Yeah. And one of the things that I don't mean to go out of order, but talking about the liver and the anger and emotions and detox and how that can either increase our toxic load, or when you start to detox, you can feel more reactive and more angry. Can we touch on that a little bit and retracing?
Oh, absolutely. I would like to. That's one of my favorite topics. So here's a way to think about this. Emotions, the way that we experience them, emotions are actually built chemically in the body, then they are experienced and felt in the body, and then they are stored in the body. So it's not that we store every emotion we've ever had, but if you have a moment where your nervous system is overloaded in life, where it's just too much too fast, could be big T trauma, could be little t, could just be stress. If you get a moment of overwhelm, your consciousness is going to do the very best job it can to meet the needs of that moment with all the internal resources that you have access to. And you may not have access to all of your internal resources in that moment because your stress might be too high. So you're going to do the best you can. You're going to form the correct emotions that match the experience in the moment and the meaning you make out of that experience. You're going to feel those emotions and then you're going to try to process and release those emotions. Whatever you're not in a position to process and release, the body puts into storage. So the issues are in the tissues. And nowhere is that more true than in the liver. So, like in our rapid liver reset group, for example, every cohort that we run for this, and now we've now helped over 10,000 people, is we tee up right at the beginning this concept that, hey, emotions are stored, the issues are in the tissues, and as you empower the body to let go, it has an intelligence of its own. It's going to let go of stored toxins, and it's also going to let go of the emotions that were held in that stagnant area in those tissues as well. We know from things like traditional Chinese medicine, there's a very beautiful intelligence and organization to the body and to your tissues where we might store some of these emotions. Grief will get stored in the lungs, right? When I got estranged from my family as a teen and I was living out of my car, I could not kick pneumonia, could not kick it.
Wow.
That makes sense looking back. Like, of course.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of anger in my liver. And so one of the things that I was so grateful for is when I finally hit on some strategies and protocols that I could do at home that were actually working. I could feel the results I knew by then what retracing was. And as I had these emotions come up, these old waves of anger and irritation, I understood that they were not about the current moment. They were actually the body mobilizing old emotions, just like it mobilizes toxins. It was happening at the same time. So you might have a gentle experience of retracing. Like I vividly remember my first moment of like, oh, this is retracing. I was in the shower and I was thinking about weird stuff that happened from when I was like 11 years old. And there was some shame attached to it and some anger. It felt like unfair. And I thought, that's so weird. I don't care about that. And I literally haven't thought about that in a couple of decades. Why does it feel like it's happening to me right now? And I went, oh, my, this retracing. Because I was working my detox protocol and I was looking for these moments. The and I really want people to become more literate about the emotional process of release because I deeply believe, having done rapid change work for decades now and having been privileged to work with some of the greatest minds of the last century, as I studied this and apprenticed under them, that the body does not volunteer an old stored experience to release unless you are ready to do so.
Do you ever wonder if, PMSing, right? The blood is a detox. Could that be why some of us are like, because we're actually detoxing that anger?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So, for example, if your liver is overloaded and your body can't keep up, if you're a female and you have active periods, your body is going to use that as a drainage pathway. And it's going to overload the uterine lining with toxins for you to excrete because it's got to get out somehow. And if your bile is toxic and sluggish and it's not moving through the liver fast enough, if your gallbladder is under functioning, or if you no longer have one, put so much pressure on the reproductive system to let go. And you already have built into your being this beautiful rhythm monthly where you actually have a cortisol spike right before you start to drain your blood, right before your period starts. So you have this day of huge cortisol spike. It's almost like a built in challenge to life where you set your boundaries and then you go into a period of letting go, literally.
A literal period, another
A
pun.
literal period of letting go. Yeah, and so and this is really important. Every toxin has associated with it a frequency, right? All of life is frequency. We know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So toxins, it's been shown, do have emotional frequencies in relationship to them. So if, for example, you're overloaded with lead, that really is closely associated with deep depression. If you have a high body load of mercury, like I did, you could have well, mercury is mercurial. You could have a wide range of
Huh.
issues, including anything from social phobia and shyness, like one of my sisters who also had a high mercury load and was considered very timid, like not in a natural way,
Yeah.
and or you could be somebody like me who had big emotions for a major period of time in my life. I went from being emotionally resilient, naturally centered
Yeah.
to, whoa, that's a wild swing from depression to hothead to overwhelm to weepy tears and then back down again. That's mercurial. That is Mercury right there. And so as you're mobilizing those toxins during your period, of course, you're going to experience an associated emotion as they exit the body. Trippy,
Wow.
right? What are your thoughts on that, Jody? You live in this world.
No, that's exactly what I was thinking too. That I mean, it was my hypothesis that the liver is so angry, and everyone kind of thinks of PMS as being bitchy. Like that's kind of the code name, oh, you're PMSing, meaning you're not being kind. So
Mhm.
yeah, I had wondered about that. It's so fascinating. And I guess the caveat I want to say for anyone who's listening and saying, oh my God, that's me. What do I do? Like you have a solution. Do you want to talk about how you help people open their drainage pathways and kind of work through this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, we could talk about, rapid liver reset. We can also just tell you the principles right now on this podcast.
Let's do that. Yeah.
Great. So, one of the things you always want to do is be supporting drainage. And that really literally does mean from the bottom up. Because if you
Yeah.
think about it, all those detoxes out there on the internet, so many of them are skipping steps. And you're basically adding to do steps, on to your body's already overloaded to do list saying, hey, do you know what? I'm going to add in these supplements and expect you to push out things that you haven't been in a position to push out on your own. Well, that's not fair if
Yes.
if you're not draining well. So we
Yes.
want to support drainage, which means if we know that that health is a state of flow, where your body's able to receive beautifully and release beautifully, easy receiving, easy releasing, then we want to be able to return to that. And that is the principle of drainage. It's the
Yes.
principle of supporting natural excretion. And we have to start from the bottom up. So if you can't poop and excrete daily, then you're not really in a position to detox, guys. So we want to be healthy, having large natural bowel movements 1 to 3 times a day in order to really ask the body to do more detox than it has been doing. So that comes first, because if you try to flush a clogged toilet, I'm sorry, but you're going to have a backup of symptoms that are totally unnecessary. And
Yes.
that's often what we call a Herxheimer reaction or Herxing. So we can't skip this step.
No,
So
you not.
bowel support first. We're draining from the bottom up. That way, everything above that in the drainage funnel can start to move. And then, of
Exactly.
course, we want to be supporting the body at the mitochondrial level, because you can't add to the body's to do list when you have mitochondrial dysfunction and say, "Hey, this is going to go great. Just work harder. Here's all these supplements to push you harder."
Yeah.
Then and your mitochondria are not in their power plant happy producing energy space. They're in their, cell danger response signaling mode because they've been exposed to a toxin, a
Yeah.
physical injury, or a life stress. The mitochondria will respond the same. And Dr. Robert Navio's work is so beautiful in describing this. That research is only a few years old now. But the mitochondria, when they undergo distress from toxins, injuries, or life events, will go into signaling mode or cell danger response mode and stop producing energy. So we actually need to invite them to reclaim the ability to create energy. So your body has enough energy to let go, because it does take work. So
What
it's not
supplements do
stimulant
you
energy. This is deep energy.
yeah, and, tell me what supplements you like for mitochondrial energy.
I really like to focus on things that will create a minimum of reactions in the beginning for a wide range of people. So Cellcore used to have good products for this, but it's not. I wouldn't
They
actually.
don't have Mito ATP?
They do not. They discontinued that. They have BCATP now,
Okay.
which is nice in my opinion for supporting the brain mitochondria. And if you do have a reaction of fatigue when you take BCATP, probably means that you need to support the body to excrete radioactive elements, which you have probably been drinking or showering in and not even realizing it, because that's the top way to get exposed that way.
Okay.
But what I like to do is use something that is far less reactive, like Energy by Bioimmersion. And this is not a well known product. I also really like MAP aminos because they are pre digested repair elements. So it doesn't matter how compromised your digestive tract is. And if you have a chronic set of symptoms, chances are your gut really needs some support, right? So we want to consider, how can we get in some pre-digested repair elements so the body has the building blocks to do the work. So those
Love.
are two great places to start. I
Mm.
also really like methylene blue, but there's a caveat there because dosing makes ensures the response. And because methylene blue is a potent biofilm breaker, you may in the short term experience, depending on how you're taking it, some side effects like, oh, the body is finally tackling some silent infections. Like methylene blue is really good at targeting silent infections in the urinary tract system. So okay, great, we want to flush out silent infections in the kidneys, in the bladder, in those beautiful little tubes, especially if you're prone to that, especially if you're a woman. We want to be able to tackle that, but we also want to do it at a pace that you can
Yeah.
tolerate. So it really
Yeah.
depends on how sensitive you are.
Yes. I know some people are really sensitive because the overachievers out there, they want to push hard and then they don't feel great because they push too hard too fast.
Exactly. And I also really want to caution you that methylene blue is wonderful, but it's not actually a natural supplement. It is a chemical. So we want to make sure that it's clean. It needs to be pharmaceutical grade. And the only two that I would personally recommend are Ultimate Methylene Blue from Global Healing Center. That's a great one to low dose and work your way up.
Mm.
Or also the Lumitol Blue from Mitozen is phenomenal for higher dosing.
No, that's great because ATP is something, you know, I don't think everyone talks about it. And I don't think there are, kind of to your point, sometimes people go too hard too fast.
Yeah, and so I know everybody knows me as a liver lady, and they're always surprised when I say energy comes, we want to do drainage and energy comes first. Well, like, what are we doing for the liver? Well, we're doing these two things. We start
Yes.
here. We have to think
Yes.
systemically in order for the liver to know that it's safe to let go. You want a clear pathway to the exits and you want the energy necessary to do the work.
I love that. This is great.
Yeah. And, one of the reasons why I really respect your body of work, Jody, is you're so good at meeting people in the urgent needs of our time. So I strongly recommend using topicals wherever possible in
Yeah.
your detox protocols because it's so helpful for the body to bypass digestion, which is often so compromised. And we create these distresses when we try to only swallow pills to do the work.
Well, and it is to your point, it's frequency. Basically, you're overlaying the frequency of a healthy liver so the body can kind of remember and you show up in a more supportive way. But
Yeah.
I didn't interrupt your drainage funnel. So starting from the bottom up, the bowels and then energy. What do you do next?
Yeah, well, so once you have the energy piece dialed in, so you want to be aware depending on how chronically ill you have been, or if you've been dealing with chronic symptoms for a while, you might need to just pause there and just really dial in your mitochondrial support. Because if mitochondrial support is fatiguing you, that means that the body is already empowered to do a backlog of work and you want to give it that time, which is great. It's why, like in every one of our group courses, but especially Rapid Liver Reset, we really emphasize that we have 3 paces that you can go at any protocol on any week. We have them already laid out. So think about it this way and think about adapting this for
That.
yourself. Oh, yeah, this is definitely a choose your own miracle. You have to go at your own pace. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
So there's the gentle healing lane. We call it pink, handle with care.
Yeah.
And it's for our sensitive folks, and there are more and more sensitive folks these days, and it makes sense. We're all overloaded. Or you can be in the yellow, slow and steady lane, that's standard dosing, or you can be in the green means go, deep healing lane. And it's color coded because I remember when I was sick, I went for several years. I could not read an email, I could not write a sentence. I had no idea what was going on in my life, in my business. It was very scary. So everything is color coded, everything is short sentences.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really important. So, and again, to your point, we always have some kind of frequency support along the way because the issues are in the tissues. And as soon as you support the body to let go, it's going to want to let go. And that's
Yes.
not just the toxins, it's the emotions. So that's where, this facility with understanding retracing comes in and understanding which organs are overloaded. So, like the spleen is well understood that it holds shocks and traumas for us,
Yeah.
which is such a beautiful gift, but you also want to gently support it to let go with care. So, like, just this, a small amount of your fascia or your parasympathetic oils would be beautiful over that.
You
Even
have some spleen oils actually.
that's right, you do. I love that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, one for, worry, like the emotions of the spleen, and then one, spleen sheath that you can use on acupuncture points.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, that's a great indirect way to support the whole spleen energy of the body is to
Yeah,
do it from the spleen acupuncture point for sure. So when we think about like why haven't other detoxes worked, they
yes,
didn't support drainage from the bottom up and
yes,
did not replenish energy before they asked your body to do more work. And they didn't really think through what does your body need to support your detox systems when digestion has already been compromised for maybe quite some time.
yes.
Because we've all been ingesting herbicides and pesticides. Even on organic food, there is some of that cross contamination. And they also spray things like glyphosate on those grains and some of those legumes to speed up harvest as a desiccant. But because they're not using it as a growing agent, they're legally allowed to say that it's organic and you're still ingesting glyphosate. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You didn't know that? Oh, yeah.
Did not
So
know that.
talk about instant leaky gut. And then, of course, we're living in a very stressful time.
Yeah,
And we really want to acknowledge that the stress alone sets off a chain reaction that can cause leaky gut. So, okay, let's just assume that we're all dealing with leaky gut and we want to gently support our way through that.
yes,
So, we don't want to use harsh detox support. But conversely, there's not enough milk thistle in the world to help the liver to let go and catch up on this backlog. That kind of support from the natural health world ain't going to cut it anymore. So what's the middle ground, right? Where we're being effective, but we're not overriding the body, we're working with it. Well, that's when we do a combination of Kidney and liver support herbs because we always want to protect the kidneys while
Yes.
and support our chi, our whole life body force, because according to Chinese medicine, the kidneys regulate life force energy, right?
Yes.
And we want to support the liver to do all of its 500 jobs,
Yes.
as
Yes.
well as clearing out old stagnation. So to undo that, we have to understand, how does stagnation really occur in the liver? What's going on under the surface? This is hard to do if you're just looking at labs, because normal markers for the liver are not really indicative of just how much distress the liver might be under. For example, the one statistic that really opened my eyes is that the liver can be down to 60% efficiency and still appear within normal lab ranges. Like, what?
Wow.
Okay. And wait a minute. Well, wouldn't I know if, okay, maybe the labs wouldn't show it, but what if I did an ultrasound and I
Mm.
didn't see any stones in the liver and I only have one gallstone, a gallstone. Well, what you're seeing on imaging is any stones that are taking place have enough mineral content to be dense enough to pick up on the image. But you may actually have thousands of stones, just like I did, that are cholesterol based and they're not dense enough to pick up on the imaging, but they are still impacting the liver's biliary tree because they're filling up those bile ducts, those 2,000 miles of super delicate bile ducts. They're supposed to be draining down into the gallbladder, and they're also filling up the gallbladder with this toxic viscous bile that's just overloaded. So this liver that's supposed to be helping with metabolizing, right? Metabolizing not just sugars, which is a huge part of what the liver does, but also fats, minerals, proteins, but also converting and processing hormones. So I get so frustrated when we see all these hormone quote unquote experts out there that are like, oh, you need to do hormone replacement therapy. I was like, well, but why? Why do you have hormones out of whack? And are we going to talk about that at all? Are you gonna support them through this? Because there's always a good reason why. And we have to look to the liver if your hormones are out of whack. It's not just about adrenal fatigue, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to think about that. We also want to think about how the liver is an essential part of the immune system and how it clears viruses, resists infections, processes prescription drugs. Even if you were on something decades ago, like my partner Michael, he has on Accutane as a teen. He did a couple of rounds of it because he had skin issues because his diet was totally crap and his parents didn't know what the deal was, of course, so they put him on Accutane to try to save him socially, and they were told it was safe and they believed them. Well, that shut down his liver at an early age. Accutane is famous for this. And so he had huge goose egg stones in his liver and he didn't even know it. He was always skinny. He did not drink alcohol. He led a very like monk-like life throughout his 20s. He was obsessed with health because he never felt good. He didn't sleep well. He had skin issues. He was super irritable. So he tried absolutely everything to resolve this, but he couldn't even take a deep breath because his liver was so enlarged. So when he finally was able to he released 15 of these big goose eggs. He kept one of them under the bathroom sink that I didn't know about for a couple of years, and I freaked out when I saw it. It was like this big. It was a real scary moment for him to wake up and realize, oh my God, not only have I been able to release these finally and painlessly. He had some nausea and some fatigue while he was releasing, but no pain.
Yeah.
He could finally take a deep breath for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
So we need to understand the function of stagnation in the liver and gallbladder itself. And we kind of understand this about the lymphatic system, I think. If you're hip to what the lymph does, it kind of makes sense why you would be holding on to extra fluid. Now, you may not
yes.
know that the consistency of lymph fluid when you're not well can be something like cottage cheese, which is pretty gross, instead of clear fluid. But it makes sense, like, "Oh, okay, I'd be puffy instead of flowing with ease. I'm just holding on to extra fluid because my lymph needs support right now." But what you can't see is that's happening in the liver, and it's happening with cholesterol-based stones and toxic sluggish bile that just can't move. So it's kind of hidden in there, which
Yeah.
is really interesting. So that's where you go to the food sensitivities, the irritability, the difficulty sleeping, especially if you're waking up between 1 and 3 a.m., the skin issues, not difficulty tolerating high fatty meals, even if they're healthy fats.
Yeah.
These are all of your signals something is wrong in the liver,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. or and nausea is more gallbladder, right? Not
Yes,
the other
exactly.
inflammatory.
Yeah, and these are so closely related, and you said something really beautiful a few minutes ago that I wanna return to about anger being stored in the liver,
Yeah,
and so resentment is stored in the gallbladder. And for women especially, what I find is that, and actually for men now more and more so because we're not allowing men to be masculine. It's no longer acceptable culturally for there's no healthy examples of masculinity. We're only lifting up and shaming toxic masculinity. Okay. So now we have men pretending to be betas that really actually do have the life force to be healthy in a masculine way. Um, and they're subverting this trapped energy. And
yeah,
women are subverting and hiding their anger because it's not socially acceptable for women to be angry. So
definitely.
what we see instead are controlling behaviors.
Oh, me. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
When really we have I actually did a podcast episode about how amazing anger is because I'm so tired of like the new age community shaming people for feeling anger. I think it is a life-saving emotion. It is
Yeah.
absolutely appropriate.
Well, it mobilizes you to make a change. Like,
Exactly.
I'm not putting up with this anymore. This is not acceptable. So I'm going to do something different. Yeah.
Exactly, and if we're not allowed to express that, especially if you're coming from a depressed state where you feel powerless, and then you
Yeah.
get a surge of anger, it's so healing and freeing, and it is literally the life force energy you need to make that change, like you just so beautifully said. So if
Yeah.
we're not allowed to express it because we're better behaved when we're depressed, and our family, our culture, our friends, our bosses, they all tell us to subvert it, then what will we do? We'll become anxious and controlling instead. That energy has to
Oh,
go
that's me. So the reason I'm anxious and controlling is because I've got stuck gallbladder energy.
and liver, yeah.
Okay. I love this.
Yeah, and it was me too, and I I'm so in love with the process of reclaiming healthy anger and honoring the body as it releases this because anger is really short-lived if you
Yes.
honor and if you give it room.
Yes. If you express it as opposed to suppress it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's part of why we need to become more literate about retracing and
Yes.
honor these flares of anger and go, okay, is this anger from yesterday or is this
Yeah.
anger today?
Is this anger from like 50 years ago? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I had, one guy that went through our rapid liver reset program, he had on his 2nd liver flush, because you have the option to do a deep flush if you're ready, if you're in that green healing lane. You don't have to, but you can. On his 2nd flush, he was just overcome with rage at his parents from when he was a teenager, and it was a kid's anger, it wasn't an adult man's anger.
Yeah.
It was a teenager railing at the world, and he was smart enough to know that was happening, and he just stayed present with it, and on the other side, he was able to reconnect with his parents who had been estranged from and have a really healthy boundary relationship with them that was about who they were as adults today instead of continuing to punish them for not knowing how to support him as a teenager. And that's the kind of breakthrough story you hear all the time. It doesn't mean that I'm advocating for people to go back to people who you felt unsafe with. What I mean is when we let go of what we were holding on to from the past, then we get to know what are our options for right now.
No, this is amazing. Can you share more about your program and how people can find out about it and work with you?
Oh, thank you, sweetie. Yeah, so Rapid Liver Reset is a 30-day program. It's this beautiful experience that Michael and I put together because we're both very different. We had major chronic illnesses. We had to go back through and remember the stuff the other day because we're writing a book and going back through what used to happen to us was kind of like, wow, I really can't believe we survived that.
Yeah.
He was super reactive and ragey, and he would have mast cell issues where his body would just turn on him overnight. All the foods he was relying on, suddenly he would be like violently allergic to. And me, I was down to 3 foods and super soggy joint issues. I got misdiagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I had fibromyalgia. I had Lyme. I was very weepy. It was super funny. And we both had really different types of fatigue. So he couldn't wake up and I couldn't go to sleep. So he likes to approach healing from one end of the spectrum, which is that deep healing green means go lane. And so if he's trying something new out and he's always been this way, he's like, okay, if I'm supposed to take two, I wonder what the whole bottle does. Like, let's just find out. And I'm at the
I'm a
other.
little bit like that too.
Are you? Well, I have
Yeah.
all kinds of respect for you because I am the opposite. I'm a giant wuss. I cannot handle that kind of stuff. So I, especially when I felt really fragile, I'd be like, why does the smallest dose that I can ease into so that I
Yeah.
don't crash? So rapid liver reset allows you to choose your speed.
Yeah.
And
It's an adventure.
yeah, maybe we can leave the link or something, whatever feels right to
No,
you.
no, we'll absolutely put the link in. And then I want to ask, is there anything we didn't touch on with drainage and detox that you think is important for people to know?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. So one of the things that I think is essential to understand is that you are once you have those foundational pieces in place, then you can actually go in and actively break up stagnation in a safe way. So you're not forcing it, but you're inviting the body to let go in a very targeted way. So we really want to consider how to do that in a way that the body can tolerate if it's already been reactive and fatigued and malnourished.
Yes.
So we use topicals like your product line, and this is really important to understand. We also use things like suppositories. If you can't get in supplements, through the orally, then there's always a way. There's tinctures. I love suppositories for this, especially for breaking up stagnation, in breaking up stones in the liver and the gallbladder. So this is really important. Using coffee enemas, doing self lymphatic massage. These are really important therapies that you want to use an adjunct. Don't just look at pills. You also
Yes.
want to do nervous system support work because without the nervous system being able to relax into a parasympathetic dominant state, then it's a rough road. So
Yeah.
we
I
really
tell people it's like biking uphill in the highest gear as opposed to like downshifting, and making it manageable.
that's the perfect metaphor. I love that.
It's
So
healing.
what can you do to support yourself? But can you do it from a frequency level, like with
Yeah,
oils? Can you do it with tapping? Lots of things are actually very cost effective or even free for nervous system support. Everybody.
exactly. Yeah. People don't know what they don't know. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I think what's I really want to close with is that we all have healing work to do. It doesn't mean that you're bad or wrong or unlovable or something's wrong with your body, even. Your body's having an absolutely logical response to having been overloaded and poisoned and being asked to go through these initiations in life where, okay, we had to meet some challenging experiences and we were only able to do the best we could. So, in order to heal and feel as good as we really have a divine right to be right now, we have to learn the art of letting go. And that starts with letting go of stories about ourselves that are outdated. We do not we do not have to be carrying around these hard stories about how we're fragile or something's wrong with us. You're absolutely brilliant. Everything that you love about yourself from some other point in your life, how resilient you used to be, how generous, how funny, how loving, how open and trusting in life, all of that is underneath these symptoms. So as soon as you empower the body to let go and excrete, all of that comes flooding back in. So it's never too late. I totally gave up hope for years. I wish I could say that I had this overnight aha. I did not. After I was hospitalized, I had 8 years of clawing my way back. And I wrote goodbye letters to my family many times. But it's okay because you can dial us in. The answers are out there for you. It's about the right thing in the right time at the right dose and going at the right speed for you. So healing is absolutely inevitable. And Jody and I are here to cheer you on. We're rooting for you. And you absolutely deserve to feel good.
And final question, where can people find you?
Oh, thanks. You can find us at detoxrejuvenation.com. Same name on Instagram. And you can listen to our podcast, Your Health Reset.
I love this. Thank you so much for all of your gems of wisdom and for explaining why people are PMSy.
Right? See, you'll never look at it the same way again. You're doing great,
Never.
ladies. You're doing great.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this podcast empowered you with some useful information and takeaways. If you liked this episode, please consider sharing a positive review or subscribing. I would also love to offer you my free parasympathetic toolkit as a gift just for listening. It will teach you how to activate the most important nerve in your body to turn on your ability to heal. This free toolkit includes a checklist, a video, and a detailed guide. If this podcast prompted any questions, you can always find answers at my blog at vibrantblueoils.com or my book, Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. Until next time, wishing you vibrant health.